Rashid Al-Mansuri had always trusted his 62-year-old father Omar with his life, his business, and most importantly, his wife Layla. But on that blood-soaked evening in their family villa in Dubai, that same man who had taught him about honor and family values would die by Rashid's own hands after being caught in the ultimate betrayal. If you're new to our channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we bring you the most shocking true crime stories from around the world. Join our crime family today and never miss an episode that will keep you on the edge of your seat. But let's go back to where it all began. In the glittering metropolis of Dubai, where ancient traditions clash with modern ambitions, the Al-Mansuri family represented everything the Emirates stood for: success, respect, and unwavering family bonds. Their sprawling villa in the prestigious Jumeirah district was more than just a home. It was a testament to 3 generations of hard work and devotion to Islamic values. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, while traditional Arabic calligraphy adorned walls that had witnessed countless family celebrations, business meetings, and sacred moments of prayer. Rashid Al-Mansuri, at 32, was the golden son who had exceeded every expectation. His import-export business, specializing in luxury goods between the UAE and South Asia, had made him a millionaire before his 30th birthday. Tall, with sharp features and eyes that commanded respect in boardrooms across the Gulf, Rashid carried himself with the confidence of a man who had never known failure. His success wasn't just financial. It was deeply rooted in the respect he commanded throughout Dubai's business community. Colleagues often remarked that Rashid possessed his father's sharp mind and his mother's compassionate heart, a combination that made him both feared and beloved in equal measure. Yet beneath his polished exterior lay a man increasingly consumed by his empire, traveling constantly between Dubai, Mumbai, and Karachi, always chasing the next deal that would cement his legacy. Omar Al-Mansuri, the family patriarch, was a living legend in their circle. At 62, his silver beard and dignified bearing made him look like a man carved from the very traditions he upheld. A retired oil executive who had helped build modern Dubai's infrastructure in the 1980s, Omar commanded respect, not just from his family, but from every mosque, every business association, and every social gathering he graced with his presence. His voice carried the weight of wisdom earned through decades of navigating the complex world of Middle Eastern business and politics. Despite his retirement, Omar remained active, spending his days managing family investments, mentoring young entrepreneurs, and serving as an unofficial advisor to his son's rapidly expanding business. His presence in the villa was both comforting and commanding, a constant reminder of the values and expectations that governed the Al-Mansuri name. Omar took immense pride in Rashid's success, often telling friends that his son had surpassed even his own achievements. But with that pride came an expectation that Rashid would always honor the family traditions that had brought them such prosperity. Layla had entered this world of privilege and expectation 4 years earlier as a 24-year-old bride, carefully chosen by both families for her beauty, her devout nature, and her ability to preserve the family's reputation. Born in a respected family from Abu Dhabi, Layla possessed the rare combination of modern education and traditional values that made her perfect for a man of Rashid's stature. With her luminous dark eyes, graceful movements, and gentle voice, she embodied everything a successful man's wife should be: elegant in public, devoted in private, and completely committed to the honor of her husband's name. The early days of their marriage have been filled with promise. Layla had adapted beautifully to life in the Al-Mansuri villa, winning over not just Rashid, but his entire extended family with her warmth and respect for their customs. She learned Omar's favorite dishes, remembered the birthdays of distant relatives, and maintained the household with the precision of a woman raised to understand that a family's reputation rested on such details. During family gatherings, she moved through rooms like a graceful shadow, ensuring every guest felt welcomed while never drawing attention away from the men's important conversations. But as Rashid's business demands grew more intense, the foundation of their marriage began showing cracks that neither of them dared to acknowledge. His trips, once lasting mere days, stretched into weeks, leaving Layla alone in the vast villa with only Omar and the household staff for company. The conversations she had once shared with her husband about their dreams, their future children, and their life together became increasingly rare, replaced by hurried phone calls about business emergencies and brief text messages apologizing for delayed returns. In the lonely evenings that followed Rashid's frequent departures, Layla found herself gravitating toward the one man in the house who still had time to notice her presence, to ask about her day, and to treat her not just as an extension of his son's success, but as a person worthy of attention and conversation. Omar had always prided himself on being a man of unshakable principles, but the growing emptiness in his own life had created vulnerabilities he never imagined possible. His wife Fatima had passed away 3 years earlier after a long battle with cancer, leaving him alone in a section of the villa that once echoed with her laughter and gentle prayers. The grief had settled into his bones like a persistent ache, one that no amount of business meetings or community responsibilities could fully ease. At 62, Omar found himself facing a loneliness that success and respect couldn't cure, surrounded by luxury, but starving for the simple human connection that had died with his beloved wife. Layla's presence in the household had initially been a source of joy for Omar, reminding him of his own daughter who lived in London with her British husband. He watched with paternal affection as she navigated her new role as Rashid's wife, offering gentle guidance when she struggled with unfamiliar social expectations or complex family politics. Their conversations began innocently enough, discussions about household management, cultural traditions, and the challenges of maintaining a home while the head of the family traveled constantly. Omar appreciated Layla's intelligence and her genuine interest in preserving the family's values, qualities that reminded him of the thoughtful conversations he used to share with Fatima during their 40 years of marriage. But as months turned into a year and Rashid's absences became longer and more frequent, the nature of these conversations began to shift in ways that neither Omar nor Layla dared to acknowledge openly. What started as practical discussions about managing servants and organizing family gatherings gradually evolved into deeper exchanges about life, dreams, and the quiet disappointments that successful people rarely discuss with others. Omar found himself looking forward to the evening hours when Layla would bring him Arabic coffee in his study, her presence bringing warmth to rooms that had felt cold and empty since Fatima's death. He began sharing stories of his younger days, his struggles building a career in the oil industry, and his pride in watching Dubai transform from a small trading port into a global metropolis. Layla listened with an attention that Rashid rarely showed anymore, asking thoughtful questions and offering perspectives that surprised Omar with their depth and maturity. For her part, Layla discovered in Omar everything she had hoped to find in marriage, but had been gradually losing as Rashid became consumed by his expanding business empire. Where her husband had become distracted and impatient, Omar was present and attentive. Where Rashid's conversations revolve around profit margins and market opportunities, Omar spoke about life's deeper meanings, about the importance of human connections, and about the wisdom that came from experiencing both triumph and loss. In Omar's study, surrounded by leather-bound books and family photographs spanning decades, Layla felt valued not just as a wife serving her function, but as an intelligent woman whose thoughts and feelings mattered to someone who took the time to truly see her. The first moment of inappropriate attraction occurred on a humid evening in late spring when Rashid had been away in Mumbai for nearly 3 weeks. Layla had been struggling with a particularly difficult situation involving Rashid's younger sister, who had been making demands about the family's Eid celebrations that went against long-standing traditions. When she brought the matter to Omar, expecting the same formal advice he had always offered, she instead found herself breaking down in tears of frustration and loneliness. Without thinking, Omar had reached out to comfort her, his hand gently touching her shoulder as she wept. The contact lasted only seconds, but the electricity that passed between them in that moment changed everything that followed. Both had immediately stepped back, apologizing and retreating to their respective areas of the house, but the damage was done. The careful boundaries that had protected their relationship had been crossed, and neither could pretend they hadn't felt something profound and deeply inappropriate in that brief moment of human connection. Over the following weeks, they found themselves walking a dangerous tightrope between propriety and desire. Their conversations became charged with unspoken tension, each accidental touch or meaningful glance carrying weight that both thrilled and terrified them. Omar began finding excuses to seek Layla's opinion on matters that had nothing to do with household management, while Layla discovered herself dressing more carefully for their evening conversations, choosing colors and styles that she knew Omar admired. The guilt that accompanied these feelings was crushing for both of them. Omar had built his entire life on principles of honor and religious devotion, while Layla had been raised to view marriage as a sacred bond that should never be violated. Yet the loneliness that consumed them both proved stronger than their moral convictions, creating a gravitational pull that neither seemed able to resist despite their desperate attempts to maintain appropriate distance. By midsummer, their relationship had evolved into something that existed in the shadows between sin and salvation. They never spoke directly about their feelings, but their actions told a story of two people slowly surrendering to a connection that violated every principle they claimed to hold sacred. Omar began timing his daily routines around moments when he might encounter Layla alone, while she found herself volunteering for tasks that would bring her into his presence, each interaction feeding a hunger that grew stronger with every passing day. The villa itself seemed to conspire in their growing intimacy, its vast rooms and private gardens providing countless opportunities for encounters that appeared innocent to any casual observer, but carried devastating emotional significance for the two people involved. As Rashid's business trips grew even longer and more frequent, Omar and Layla found themselves alone together more often, the empty house becoming both their sanctuary and their prison, a place where their forbidden feelings could flourish in the dangerous silence between what was said and what was desperately wanted but never dared to be spoken aloud. The scorching July heat had driven most of Dubai indoors, but within the climate-controlled sanctuary of the Al-Mansuri villa, a different kind of fire was building toward an explosion that would destroy 3 lives forever. Rashid had been in Karachi for nearly a month, negotiating a complex deal involving textile imports that required his constant presence, leaving Layla and Omar alone in a house that seemed to grow smaller with each passing day despite its enormous size. The servants had been given extended leave for the summer, a decision Omar had made claiming he wanted privacy to work on his memoirs. But the truth was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The villa's vast corridors, once filled with the sounds of family life, now echoed only with the footsteps of two people circling each other like planets caught in a destructive gravitational dance. On the evening of July 15th, the inevitable finally occurred. Layla had been in the kitchen preparing Omar's dinner when a sudden thunderstorm knocked out the power, plunging the house into darkness. Omar had found her there, standing by the window, as lightning illuminated her face in stark, beautiful relief. They had stood there in the darkness, neither speaking, both knowing that they had reached a moment from which there would be no return. When Omar's hand finally touched her face, when their lips met in a kiss that tasted of desperation and years of suppressed longing, the last barriers between them crumbled like ancient walls facing a hurricane. The affair that began that night was unlike anything either had experienced before. For Omar, it represented a return of feelings he thought had died with his wife, a rekindling of passion that made him feel decades younger. For Layla, it was her first taste of being truly desired, of being seen not as a dutiful wife fulfilling her role, but as a woman worth risking everything to possess. Their encounters took place in the shadowy corners of the villa, in Omar's study after midnight, in the garden house where the sound of fountains masked their whispered conversations and desperate embraces. Each meeting was charged with the electricity of forbidden fruit, the knowledge that they were violating not just their religious beliefs, but the most fundamental bonds of family trust. The physical relationship was intoxicating, but it was the emotional connection that truly bound them together, the sense that they had found in each other something that had been missing from their lives for far too long. As the weeks passed, their affair grew bolder and more reckless. Omar began showering Layla with gifts that he claimed were from Rashid, jewelry and perfumes that he had purchased during secret shopping trips to Gold Souk. Layla, meanwhile, found herself transformed by the relationship, her movements more confident, her smile more radiant, changes that she convinced herself were too subtle for anyone to notice. They created elaborate lies to explain their absences from family gatherings, developed secret codes for their text messages, and learned to look at each other with carefully neutral expressions when others were present, all while carrying the intoxicating secret of what they shared in private. But by early September, cracks began appearing in their carefully constructed deception. Rashid's younger sister Amina, who had always been particularly observant, noticed during a family dinner that Layla seemed different, more animated and confident than she had been in months. She mentioned this to her husband, who dismissed it as natural happiness about Rashid's business success, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. More dangerously, some of Rashid's business associates had begun commenting on how relaxed and content Omar appeared, joking that retirement was clearly agreeing with him in ways that surprised everyone who knew him. The servants, upon returning from their extended leave, noticed subtle changes in the household dynamics. The way Layla and Omar seemed to communicate with glances, the way certain rooms in the house carried unfamiliar scents and showed signs of use that couldn't be explained by their official functions. Most concerning of all was Layla's behavior when Rashid finally returned from his extended business trip in late September. Instead of the relief and joy she had shown during his previous homecomings, she seemed nervous and distant, unable to meet his eyes directly, her responses to his questions about life in Dubai vague and evasive. Rashid, exhausted from weeks of intense negotiations and jet lag from the long flight home, initially attributed her strange behavior to the strain of managing the household alone for so long. He was too tired and too focused on upcoming business commitments to recognize the signs of a woman who had discovered passion in the arms of another man, signs that should have been obvious to any husband paying close attention to his wife's transformation from dutiful spouse to confident woman harboring dangerous secrets that grew more impossible to hide with each passing day. The discovery that would shatter the Al-Mansuri family forever came on October 23rd, through the most modern of betrayals, a smartphone notification that arrived at the worst possible moment. Rashid had returned from a brief 2-day trip to Abu Dhabi, exhausted but eager to surprise Layla with an early homecoming. As he quietly entered the villa through the servant's entrance, hoping to catch her off guard with flowers and a diamond bracelet he had purchased at the gold souk, his phone buzzed with a message meant for Omar. In his haste to check what he assumed was a business update, Omar had accidentally sent a text intended for Layla to his son instead. "My darling, I can still taste your lips from last night. Every moment apart from you feels like an eternity. When will you be in my study tonight?" The words hit Rashid like physical blows, each phrase destroying another piece of the world he thought he understood. His hands trembled as he read the message again, hoping desperately that he had misunderstood, that there was some innocent explanation for his father's intimate words addressed to someone called "my darling." But the sick certainty settling in his stomach told him everything he needed to know. The timeline of betrayal unfolded in his mind with devastating clarity. His business trips, the servant's extended leave, the subtle changes in both Layla and Omar that he had been too busy to notice. The villa that had been his sanctuary was now revealed as the stage for the ultimate violation of trust, a place where his wife and father had been conducting their affair while he worked tirelessly to build a future for his family. Rashid stood in the marble foyer, surrounded by the luxury his hard work had provided, feeling like a stranger in his own home. The family photographs lining the walls seemed to mock him now, images of happier times when he believed in the honor and loyalty that had supposedly governed their lives. His father's teachings about family values, about the sacred bonds between husband and wife, about the respect owed to those who trusted you with their most precious possessions. All of it was revealed as elaborate hypocrisy from a man who had been systematically destroying his son's marriage while preaching about traditional morality. Moving through the house like a man in a trance, Rashid followed the sound of muffled voices coming from his father's study. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap he could see them. Omar seated in his leather chair with Layla perched on the armrest, her hand gently stroking his silver hair while they spoke in the intimate whispers of longtime lovers. The scene was domestic and tender in a way that made Rashid's betrayal even more devastating. This wasn't a moment of passion or temporary weakness, but the comfortable intimacy of two people who had been sharing a secret life together for months, possibly years. For several minutes, Rashid watched them through the crack in the door, his rage building with each gentle caress, each loving glance exchanged between his wife and father. Layla looked more relaxed and genuinely happy than he had seen her in their entire marriage, while Omar appeared decades younger, animated by an energy that Rashid now realized had nothing to do with his retirement and everything to do with his forbidden relationship with his daughter-in-law. The weight of the deception was crushing, not just the affair itself, but the elaborate performance they had both maintained, the careful lies, the mock concern for his welfare while they conducted their betrayal under his own roof. When Rashid finally pushed open the door and stepped into the study, both Omar and Layla froze like criminals caught in the act, which is exactly what they were. Layla's face went white with terror, while Omar straightened in his chair with the dignity of a man who knew his world was about to end but refused to show weakness in his final moments. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the weight of revealed secrets and the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same again. How long? Rashid's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the force of a man whose entire existence had just been revealed as an elaborate lie. Neither Omar nor Layla answered immediately, both understanding that any explanation would only make their betrayal more unforgivable. The study, once Omar's private sanctuary where he had dispensed wisdom and family guidance, now felt like a courtroom where the final judgment was about to be rendered. Omar finally stood, facing his son with the remnants of paternal authority, but the man who had once commanded respect through moral leadership now appeared small and ashamed. Rashid, he began, but his son cut him off with a gesture that conveyed more contempt than any words could express. The confrontation that followed would be seared into the memories of everyone who lived through its aftermath, a moment when years of suppressed rage, betrayal, and shattered trust exploded into irreversible violence. Rashid's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the weight of a man whose entire world had just collapsed around him. "Answer me," he repeated, his words cutting through the suffocating silence like a blade. "How long have you been making a fool of me in my own house?" Omar rose from his chair with whatever dignity remained to him, but the man who had once commanded respect through moral authority now appeared diminished, caught in the most shameful act imaginable. "Son, this isn't what you think," he began, but Rashid's bitter laughter interrupted him, a sound devoid of any warmth or forgiveness. "This isn't what I think. I have your text messages, Father. I can see her lipstick on your collar. I can smell her perfume on your clothes." The words hung in the air like poison, each accusation stripping away another layer of the lies that had protected their secret world. Layla remained frozen against the wall, her face a mask of terror, as she watched the two most important men in her life face each other like ancient enemies preparing for battle. The study, once a sanctuary of wisdom and family guidance, had become an arena where the final act of their tragedy would unfold. When Omar tried to approach his son, perhaps hoping that physical proximity might somehow bridge the chasm of betrayal between them, Rashid stepped backward, as if his father's touch would contaminate him further. "Don't," he warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Don't you dare try to play the loving father now, after what you've done." The rage that had been building in Rashid since he first read that devastating text message was now consuming him entirely, burning away years of respect and love until only bitter hatred remained. Omar's attempts at explanation became increasingly desperate as he realized that his son was beyond reason, beyond forgiveness. "She was lonely, Rashid. You were never home. I was trying to comfort her, to be there for your family when you couldn't." But these words, intended as justification, only fueled Rashid's fury further. The suggestion that his dedication to building their family's future had somehow justified this ultimate betrayal was more than he could bear. In that moment, something fundamental broke inside Rashid's mind, the final thread holding his sanity together snapping under the weight of discovering that his father had not only stolen his wife, but was now trying to blame him for their affair. The decorative dagger that hung on the study wall, a family heirloom that had belonged to Rashid's grandfather, seemed to call to him as he reached for it with trembling hands. The blade, polished and sharp despite its ceremonial purpose, felt heavy with the weight of justice as Rashid turned to face the man who had raised him, taught him about honor, and then destroyed everything those lessons had meant. "You taught me that family was sacred," Rashid said, his voice eerily calm now, the rage having crystallized into something cold and deadly. "You taught me that a man's honor was worth more than his life. What does that make you, Father?" Omar saw the dagger in his son's hand and finally understood that words would not save him, that the betrayal he had committed was beyond forgiveness or explanation. For the first time since Rashid had entered the study, real fear flickered in the old man's eyes as he realized that the son he had raised to value honor above all else was about to exact the ultimate price for his violation of every principle they had held sacred. The attack, when it came, was swift and brutal, driven by months of suppressed rage and the devastating pain of ultimate betrayal. Rashid lunged forward with the dagger, and Omar, despite his age, fought back with the desperation of a man who knew he was fighting for his life. They crashed into bookshelves, sending decades of collected wisdom scattering across the floor as father and son engaged in the most primal of conflicts. Layla's screams echoed through the villa as she watched the two men who had shaped her world destroy each other in a cascade of violence that seemed to go on forever. When the struggle finally ended, Omar lay motionless on the Persian carpet that had been a wedding gift to Rashid and Layla, his blood staining the intricate patterns that had once represented the beauty and tradition of their family heritage. Rashid stood over his father's body, the dagger still clutched in his trembling hands, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what he had done. The man who had taught him his first prayers, who had guided him through the complexities of business and life, who had been his moral compass for 32 years, was dead by his own hand. The police arrived within hours, summoned by neighbors who had heard Layla's screams and the sounds of violence emanating from the Al-Mansuri villa. They found Rashid sitting calmly beside his father's body, the dagger placed carefully on the coffee table, his hands folded in his lap, as if he were waiting for prayer time to begin. He offered no resistance when they handcuffed him, and his only words were a request that his father be buried according to Islamic tradition, despite the circumstances of his death. The trial that followed became a sensation throughout the Gulf states, a cautionary tale about the dangers of passion and betrayal within traditional families. Rashid's lawyers argued temporary insanity brought on by extreme emotional distress, while Layla's testimony about the affair confirmed every detail of the prosecution's case. The judge, recognizing the cultural context of honor and betrayal, sentenced Rashid to 25 years in prison, a punishment that reflected both the gravity of his crime and the understanding that he had been driven to violence by the ultimate violation of trust. Layla, whose affair had triggered the tragedy, faced her own consequences as the scandal destroyed her reputation throughout Dubai's close-knit community. Ostracized by family and friends, she eventually fled to London, where she lives in exile, forever marked by her role in the destruction of the Al-Mansuri family. The villa in Jumeirah was sold, its rooms too haunted by memories of betrayal and violence to ever again serve as a family home. Today, the Al-Mansuri name, once synonymous with success and honor, serves as a reminder that even the strongest families can be destroyed when trust is violated and passion overwhelms wisdom, leaving behind only the echoes of what might have been if love and loyalty had triumphed over desire and deception.